This is Dr. Cynthia. Today we're speaking on practical ways to use apologetics and polemics. And we are at a conference here where for 3 days people have been learning a lot of ways to defend the Bible and to question Islam. But that can get to be a bit overwhelming. So what we want to do in this session is find ways to make it practical. We will talk about starting a personal apologetic testimony. After sharing the gospel, which we recommend the Path of the Prophets for, you can see it on the homepage of our website as a video, or you can download it off our resources page at christianfrommuslim.com. That's our main thing. We do want them to know the gospel. But we have found they will not really convert or have the courage and strength to leave Islam unless they know that they know Islam is wrong. So today we're going to talk about ways that we can defend our faith and also challenge Islam a bit. So what is your personal apologetic? It's P-A-T. I say make your pat and get it down pat. That means know it. Know what you're going to say. And with that apologetic testimony, you need to tailor it or make it fit the people you are talking to. The Bible tells us always to be ready to share our faith. But a lot of times now we're sharing our faith in this, what we call post-Christian society. We're sharing it with people that know nothing about the Bible. We're often with people who are skeptics or atheists. And then in this particular training, we are with people, Lord willing, who are Muslims, and they have a different perspective than people from a secular background. So I'm thinking you might want to make 2 different pats. I have 2 pats, and my first pat that I came up with was for skeptics. You know, I'm a medical background. Here I am with some specimens. So this is what I came up with for my pat, my personal apologetic testimony that I share with atheists. So what I'm encouraging you to do is look at your life. Who are you? What do you do? And which of all the evidences that you have heard about or seen today or some other time, which are the top 3 or 4? Or maybe just 2? Or maybe start with 1. But the idea is you want to have a few that you can say are very convincing to you. So me, from a medical background, there are some scientific facts that I find extremely compelling or convincing that God exists and the Bible is true. Now, when I talk to Muslims, I have a very different set. I don't need to convince them that God is real. They believe that. But I need to explain to them why I believe the Christian faith and not Islam. So since we're calling this a bit of a workshop, I'm going to ask you, I won't ask for your whole personal apologetic testimony, like what comes from you. That would include things like, well, I've been trying to learn about Islam. You know, you might say I'm a student and part of what I do is learn about other faiths. And from what I've learned about Islam, these are the reasons that I am a Christian and not a Muslim. That's the kind of introduction you could do to your pat. But then you want to list some things. You give that what's called in rhetoric or in speaking. You guys will learn a little bit of college material here. There's ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos is the source of a message. So depending on who you are speaking to, you're going to be more credible or less credible. That's ethos. For example, if I speak to a medical audience, they know I have a doctorate, they know my post-medical training. That means they trust me in that. Or if I'm a grandma and I'm talking to another grandma or a mother, that gives me some basis that they will accept if they're also that way. So if you're a student, you can use that. So that's the personalizing part. But the actual reasons that you believe are impersonal, and that's the logos. Okay, so you go from your ethos of who you are, basically, and then you give the logos or the reasons of why you believe what you do. The third thing is pathos. That's going to be the emotion you put into it. And that will vary with your audience. If you're talking to somebody who's very head-oriented, you don't necessarily need to use much enthusiasm. But if it's somebody with a lot of heart needs, you can speak it in a very tender and emotional way. So those are the three components of any message that you will give. And if you don't remember the Greek names, I think you kind of understand what I'm talking about, right? The source, the message, and the emotion in it. So here's a slide for developing a PAT for Islam. I'm going to let you work on your one for just general people in the West or your student buddies that are skeptics or atheists. That will be a different one. But for today, this is the PAT for Islam. I personally have 4 that I use that to me are very convincing. But I want you to stop for a minute and think. You don't have to look at that, just reflect. I'll give you a bit of quiet time. Reflect. What did you hear that you find so powerful that it's one of the reasons that you believe the gospel and you believe Christianity is right and not Islam? Okay, so take a minute, just jot it down. Who would like to share with us something that you found convincing enough that you would put it in your personal apologetic testimony? Anybody? Did you learn anything this weekend you thought was compelling? Yes.
I love the character of God.
The character of God in Christianity versus Islam.
Yes.
So if you were giving your apologetic testimony, your personal apologetic testimony, you would say, I am so-and-so. I won't mention your name on camera. I am so-and-so, and why I believe in Christianity rather than Islam. Well, one of the reasons is just that I believe the character of God presented in the Bible is more reflective of reality than Islam. Something like that. Okay. Anybody else have an idea to share with the group? Yes. Good. So you're saying the consistency of the character of God. Right. That is a good one. And also you mentioned loving and caring. And when I talk about reasons that I prefer Christianity over Islam and I make a list, one of the things I do mention is what's called personal preference. Now that is, it kind of shouldn't be your first argument because that's just like your personal thing. But we all are allowed our opinion, our personal opinion. So after I give, the reasons from the Bible, or I might say because the Quran is not consistent with the Bible, it comes from a different source. There's no sacrifice for sin in Islam. Where did it go? And a few other things. But I might end with that little bit of pathos of, yes, those are the compelling reasons. The term I like to use is the weight of the evidence. The weight of the evidence to me favors Christianity over Islam. Or if you're talking to an atheist, the weight of the evidence to me favors Christianity or favors a God over atheism. Because that's basically what we're saying. But by using the term the weight of the evidence, it makes it more concrete that you are using actual logic and you are using a degree of rhetoric and you are weighing it So after you give that, the evidence, the weight of the evidence, then you can give your personal. And so at that time, sometimes it depends again who I'm talking to, if they are totally head or if they have heart. But with women, I can also say, and frankly, all things being equal, if they were, which I don't believe, but I do prefer a God who loves everyone. I do prefer the Bible because it says women are equal to God, to men. We're all made in the image of God. I do prefer a heaven where women are equally with men fellowshipping and enjoying God. I really don't like the idea of being a sex slave in heaven. So, that's where you go into the pathos at the end of your argument, depending on who you're speaking to. So you are allowed to give a preference, but don't give that as your first reason, because then you blow it like you have no evidence. It's just emotion for you. So you do want to give solid reasons. Yes. You're talking about the weight of the manuscript evidence. The second was the contradictions within the Quran. And the third one is, I don't see it really lived out in the lives of Muslims to make the world a better place. I feel that Christianity does that better, and you can give that example. And the fourth could be your preference or something. So does everybody have an idea now, or someone else would like to share? So correct me if I'm wrong or if we need to add one, but we could say your first reason is because the Quran just, you have trouble accepting it because its integrity and the possibility of changes from before. The second one is the way women are treated and the sexual obsession of Islam. And it really is a sexual obsession, both here and in heaven. When Jesus said we pray, Christians pray, and many of us pray every day the Lord's Prayer. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, how is it in heaven for Christians? We have a fellowship. We know a lot of things we didn't know we will know. We'll be with God. There will be light. It will be great. What is the heaven for Muslims? It's very different. It's a very sensual heaven. And yet, if they are trying to do on earth what they do in heaven they're having sex all the time and eating, when they follow that, it's a very ugly path. And if the way I look at it and say it is, if that's your idea of the most supreme status of human beings, is just going around having sex all the time with different women, that's not a very elevated idea. You are better than that. Sometimes I will say that on a broadcast. You are better than that. You don't have to live like an animal or hope for that in heaven. So when a former Muslim that I was discipling said to me, Cynthia, I just got so tired of my husband always thinking about sex with other women. One time I checked on his phone and he had like 4 Olgas, a lot of Russian women. And I couldn't handle it anymore. So I left, even though it meant I gave up a very luxurious lifestyle. And I said to her, well, he was doing on earth as it is in heaven. So, that is a reason of itself. I don't like your view of heaven, and I don't think it fits with what the Bible teaches. We just finished the description of how to make a personal apologetic testimony.